Changing your engine oil regularly is one of the best things you can do to keep your engine running healthy. I'm going to show you how I change the engine oil on this 2017 Nissan Armada. The first thing I do is get the engine up to temperature and then turn the engine off and add just a little bit of seafoam, maybe a quarter or third of a can, just to get a little extra cleaning when we dump this oil. I never let this sit in the engine oil longer than the 2 to 5 mile drive I'm about to go on, with some pretty high revs, making sure it sloshes around. But I don't want to keep this stuff inside the engine too long. Once I get back, I use a 13 millimeter socket to remove these 4 bolts, 2 in the front here, and then 2 more rear to remove this belly pan. You don't need to remove the many screws you see, just these 4 13 millimeters, and then the whole pan drops away. You can see how there's still that air dam underneath still connected. There is the oil filter, and what concerned me is just to the left there, all that seepage there. I investigated it further and determined that someone spilt oil when they were filling it up last oil change, because it leads all the way back up to the fill cap pretty dramatically. So to remove the engine oil drain plug, use a 14 millimeter socket. Let all that filthy oil come out. This oil only had about 1,500 miles on it. The vehicle has about 108 or 109,000 miles on it. I'm using my oil filter wrench to loosen the oil filter, let it drain out, and then spin it off. Make sure that's wiped clean. And then I add about a half quart, maybe even a little bit more, to drain out any remaining dirty oil from that oil pan. So I just let it fill up. I put the drain plug just back in for a half second, and then you can see this coming out pretty clean. I probably put in a little too much, but hey. Now use some new or old oil and lubricate the O-ring on the new oil filter. I will link to genuine Nissan oil filters on Amazon in the video description. If you don't want to use genuine Nissan filters, I would use a Mobil 1 filter, which I will link to in the video description as well. I prefer to use OEM for the engine oil filter whenever I'm changing engine oil. With the old engine oil and filter removed, we can now take a look at the drain plug. There is a crush washer that is included if you have a stock oil pan. You need to use a pick or a knife to get in there, and then use the threads to remove the old crush ring. Pay attention to its orientation. It only goes on one way. You can notice this. It's kind of bowl-shaped, which bowls away, and that semicircle cutout touches the flat of the drain plug bolt. So put that on, make sure it's not cross-threaded, get it as close as you can to the head of the bolt. Some oil pans don't use a crush ring, they actually use a reusable drain plug, but this OEM one uses a crush ring. You should replace every time. Now I'm going to use a smaller wrench to tighten that down to make sure it's just nice and snug. And it can feel like it's tight, but I'm taking out the torque wrench and I'm tightening it down to 25 foot-pounds. It needed to be tightened down just a little bit more. And then before I put on the oil filter, I fill it up about halfway, maybe a little bit more. I don't need to be spilling it all out, but I like to fill it up. Making sure that surface was nice and clean, not to cross-thread the filter. I'm gonna make sure that's nice and tight. You should be able to just clean it off and use your hand. I actually use the wrench, and this is probably a no-no, and tighten it down just an extra quarter turn without damaging the filter. Now we can add the 0W20. I am using Mobil 1 to fill this thing up. And it says it takes about 7 quarts of oil. So I'm gonna pour in about 7 quarts first and see where it gets us. In order to prime the oil system, I hold down the brake and the accelerator pedal, then hit the ignition once. To crank the engine and not start it, hopefully moving some oil throughout the system. Again, be sure the engine oil is filled before starting the engine. Then go ahead and start the engine and run it just for a couple minutes. I only do this cranking briefly and then start the engine normally. After the engine ran for a couple minutes, turn the engine off and wait 15 minutes to get an accurate reading of the engine oil. So you can see the reading here. We need to add a little bit more. I believe it called for 6.9 quarts. And you can see where 7 got us, just kind of at the low mark. So I am gonna add a little bit more. I think you should add 7.2 or 7.3 quarts for a Nissan Armada 5.6 liter engine. That'll get you right under the high mark. I ended up adding maybe a little bit more than that, and I got right to the high mark. You can see that's about 7.3 quarts. That would have been about perfect because some of the engine oil will fall down. You need to follow the procedure for checking the engine oil by letting it run up to temperature and then waiting at least 15 minutes to check it. And while that's running, you can make sure that it's not leaking or anything. Turn it off, check the engine oil after 15 minutes have passed, and verify that it is above the low mark and below the high mark. Once it's verified no leaks and the level is accurate, you can then install that belly pan again. And it is a little bit difficult. You got to kind of get at least one bolt in. Use your other free hand to hold it up. Make sure that's nice and tightened down so it doesn't fall off. And one final check after the engine has been turned off for 15 minutes. We can see here that the engine oil is just about perfect. Right at that high mark, you can see it kind of angles at a 45 across the dipstick, but that is just about perfect. A level slightly lower than that would be perfectly acceptable as well. Now we can go through the menu and reset the oil life warning light, and it is in this front dash here using the buttons just to the side. And you go through to maintenance. You can see here we have tire, filter, and oil. Set whichever one you want for a fresh reminder. I change engine oil every 3,000 to 4,000 miles, but I like to set reminders to check the engine oil in between oil changes just to make sure we're not losing any and everything is looking A-okay. So that's why I'm setting these to 1,750 and 3,000. So if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Any additional links will be provided in the video description. If you have any questions at all, please leave a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you.